Today's story was written by Reddit user TheLostTimeLord. I had never seen a human in person, as they say. I had heard stories about their amazing feats and seen photographs. It was apparent from my study that humans travel in bonded pairs, and more often in large packs. It wasn't until the human came aboard my own ship that I found out just how wrong I was. One human was assigned to bunk with me. Only one. Very odd, I thought. A solitary human? I had never heard of such a thing. Still, when she arrived carrying an enormous rucksack, I was unsurprised to find a much larger human being walking in her wake. It then looked at me. I only ever heard stories, legends, myths about the star-crossed race of trans-dimensional beings my people called, well, I can't say it in basic, but I suppose it translates to the ones who burn. The moment I saw the creature's eyes, I knew it was humanoid, but certainly not human. Alison was quite pleasant. I would even say I enjoyed speaking with her when I was able to come close enough to her and the creature she inexplicably bonded with. Needless to say, I only pretended to sleep in my bunk in our shared room. In actuality, I slept in the break room every night after Alison went to bed, because I was too scared to close even one eye with that creature with the burning eyes nearby. It simply stood over her bunk, wings appearing out of nowhere to shield Alison's body. It never spoke to any of us, but I could sometimes see it whisper in Alison's ear. Shortly after the creature delivered its message, sometimes Alison would have spontaneous, brilliant ideas. I was too scared to ask her about her friend, but Ozaf, having all the tact of a blundering herd of biljups, asked Alison about her strong, silent friend. He didn't know anything about the legends on my homeworld, the stories of how the Burning Ones fell into torment, scarred beyond recognition by a war too large to properly describe in words. They had disappeared from the universe, without a trace, a millennia ago. I wondered now where they had been all this time, and why they would return. Alison didn't seem to understand Ozaf's question. She didn't seem offended by it. In fact, it was more than that. I don't think she even heard most of what he had said, as her stoic companion leaned in and whispered in her ear. Alison turned to Ozaf and said, "I truly don't know what you're talking about. However, there was an ancient legend on Earth about guardian angels. But they aren't real. Perhaps your entertainment console is misleading human fiction as fact. I certainly have never seen one, and I travel alone." Ozaf turned 6 shades of pale green, made his apologies, and ran as fast as his tentacles could take him. I was dumbfounded. I finally made eye contact with this guardian angel, and whispered far too quietly for a human auricular organ to detect, "Can you hear me?" The angel, I swear by all the stars, that monster smiled at me, and then he and Alison left. It was a single galactic standard day later that our ship was attacked. I was walking to a shift change with Alison when the hull was blown open. Then I understood her human myth of guardian angels. Alison leapt away from the pull of the vacuum. She should not have been able to lunge as far as she did. It was her guardian angel. His wings blazed to life as he thrust her forward, just enough that she was able to catch a handhold. I do not believe any other species would have been able to see and process the details of what was happening in real time. My kind, however, evolved on a world tumultuous and dangerous, perhaps more volatile than the human homeworld, which is widely considered to be one of the more dangerous life-sustaining planets in our sector of space. My eyes are quick, and I could see all the Guardian did. He touched an emergency cache, and all the hinges shattered, dumping its contents into the hull. A lifeline tumbled in a low-gravity, vacuum-breached atmosphere in an upwards arc towards the Guardian's charge. Alison caught the line. I watched as several of our crewmates were sucked out into the vacuum. I would have shared their fate if it were not for the human and her angelic partner. The human woman, whom I was too scared to speak more than a few words to, threw me the lifeline and yanked me to the safety rail. I caught hold, clinging for dear life, and praying to all the gods I would be spared. The Farg boarders leapt through the breach in our hull. Their advance guard wore heavily armoured vacuum suits and carried repeating plasma rifles. Our ship, a simple merchant vessel, would not withstand an assault of such ferocity. Alison's electromagnetic boots activated and yanked her body down to the deck. She had a lifeline fastened to her waist, but she charged the boarders, unarmed and unafraid, howling inaudibly over the screech of the void. The first Farg raised its rifle. Alison curled back her arm, winding it like a giant spring. The gun was almost level with her body. She swung. The Farg took aim, and the plasma sparked inside the containment unit. Her fist collided with the Farg armour. It was not alone. The Guardian had joined her assault, its massive hand moving in sync with the tiny woman's fist. The armour breached. There was an electrical failure in the soldier's boots. The impact of Alison's dual strike knocked the brigand off the deck. They collided with their team as they entered the breach, and the entire boarding party tumbled backwards into space. Alison tossed a hull breach canister from her left hand. The device's lasers activated, scanning the area and then extruding a thin nanomesh to seal the hull against vacuum. Gravity went back to its normal 0.7 rate. I was one of 2 survivors from the breach site that day. 3 if you count the Angel. After the chaos was over, I laid in my own bed. I watched the Angel overshadow Alison with its wings as she slept peacefully. My courage peaked. I spoke. "Why?" To my amazement, the Angel responded, its voice rich and resonant, but still quiet. "When we lost all hope in the universe, we found purpose. We do not guide them as their legends lead one to believe. They guide us." Before the beginning, 2 planets orbited one star. Long, long ago, both of these worlds sustained life. That was before the great star began to burn, dark and cold, violently lashing out at all life within its reach. This is, at least, how the story goes. Eons later, I was born upon the planet which remains, the world which survived against odds. I ran in the endless forests, bathing in the beautiful calm. I survived the untamable storms. Where others failed in the great battle, I would succeed. From what Alison has told me, and what I have read about her home, I believe it to be similar to my own. Beautiful but merciless, volatile but spectacular. A world which produces hard beings, the kind of individual which one would desperately want at one's side when, as Alison says, it hits the fan. Alison's guardian angel is not from Terra, the Sol system, or even the Milky Way. I've only convinced him to speak a handful of times, only when we are alone, and Alison is deep in her strange REM cycles. It has been weeks since he first spoke, and he will not tell me his name. What he did say is that if he voiced his name, it would be forever ruined by the sound. So, on that cheery note, I'll call him Shadow. If the legends are to be believed, Shadow was born on the now desolate world designated Seraph II. This dead planet orbits the same star I was born under, but much closer. Scientists from around the galaxy come to study the mystery that is my homeworld, and always reach the same conclusion: we should not exist. To my knowledge, no one else from Seraph has ever crewed a ship with a human. I can't claim to be the greatest of believers, and perhaps I am alone in my revelation. Prior to meeting Alison, I would have dismissed the stories of the Burning Ones as primitive superstitions on my planet. Now that I have watched Alison and Shadow, I am positive life persists because of the Burning One's sacrifice. Some days I am not entirely convinced that Alison is completely sane, but that isn't a bad thing. In fact, on my homeworld we say the maddest mind burns the brightest. On the day of the attack, Alison blazed. She will tell you that she got lucky. Those of us who saw the full picture will explain that in moments where her skill was not enough, her companion, bridge the gap. I think that without Shadow, Alison would be a formidable force. With him, she is unstoppable. After seeing Shadow in action, I began to watch Alison closely, considering that Shadow's purpose appears to be one of assistance and protection. It is interesting to note that he does not keep Alison from all harm. She has been grievously injured with a deep wrinkled scar that now runs down her entire left arm. I believe it would be fair to say she has even been maimed. Yet, some days it appears that Shadow protects her from harm so minuscule, from my perspective, it seems quite pointless. Given this fact, coupled with the raw power Shadow is capable in certain moments, I have come to believe he is limited by some complex set of rules. The legends of Seraph speak of burning creatures possessing the might and fortitude to stand alone against an armada, but also brings who are very much not like us. The burning ones are described as ethereal and disconnected from our physical universe, the defiers of natural law. Perhaps Shadow sees things we do not. Perhaps he knows which scars Alison is capable of bearing, which battles she can stand to lose. Perhaps he is working towards some greater goal on a grand scale beyond my comprehension. Perhaps Shadow and others like him are not all that they once were. I also discussed Alison's intervention on the day the pirates boarded with others on the crew. I found rather unsurprisingly, not everyone can see Shadow. The captain, Geraint, is incapable just like Alison. These people explain away the inexplicable nearly instantaneously. Despite her high level of education, Alison is a great proponent of luck. While she attests that certain things, such as the phenomenon of luck, are mathematically unlikely, they are also not clearly explicable within the confines of known science. Despite what she knows, Alison explained that she feels as well, and this is a deeper type of knowing. Others have seen Alison, and in some cases, Shadow at work. As we have spent more time together as a crew, this tour has provoked much curiosity. Somehow, gods know why, the idiot Ozaph can see Shadow. Fultane, one of our resident scientists from Galmora, suggested we test a hypothesis regarding why Shadow is invisible by using a spectroscope. I warned them prodding Shadow would not go well. Call it intuition. The end result was Fultane and Ozaph being called into an awkward meeting to explain to the captain and the chief executive officer why a very expensive, sensitive scientific instrument was removed from its mounting in the laboratory deck and left outside the female egg-bearing crew member shower facility. They might be able to explain the positioning of the device. I doubt they will have a satisfactory answer for why it burst into flames. In the weeks leading up to Alison's arrival aboard the Fractal, many crew members remarked at the strange bright red fragile signage which was added throughout the ship. Now that I have spent time working with Alison, I understand why. Humans possess a strange tendency towards a practice which other human watchers are calling percussive maintenance. Scientifically, it makes no sense, yet it works. For humans, that is. The lab reproductions have been inconclusive. I believe this is Fultane's way of saying he failed without actually admitting it. After many hours of careful disassembly, cleaning, repair, and reassembly, the spectroscope did not function. It really should have. There remained nothing broken or disconnected. Ozaph attempted to reproduce the miraculous effects of human percussive maintenance and lost 6 centimeters of his frontal manipulation tentacle when the device destabilized and fell on him. The appendage will grow back. His pride might take longer to mend. Alison and I were on our way to eat when she noticed that Fultane and Ozaph were struggling with the spectroscope and offered to help. She gently tapped on the casing next to the power switch, told the machine to play nice, flicked the switch, and it immediately activated. Fultane and Ozaph were too distracted by Alison's success to notice that Shadow had stuck his arm inside the instrument's casing for a moment. Shadow remains rather emotionless most of the time. He is focused on his work, especially in times of danger. Still, after many days watching him in moments like this, I have noticed subtleties. His every action is not life-changing for Allison. Sometimes one might even say what he does is silly, but when Allison smiles, the ever-present stony facade that is Shadow's face softens. The fire in his eyes changes colours ever so slightly, and I feel Shadow smiles back. Those creatures capable of tearing the fabric of reality, those warriors who laid waste to 1,000 ships, those who once stood as guardians of an entire civilizations, those poor souls who sacrificed themselves to the fire at the edge of the universe so that the rest of us could live. The ascended beings who are said to have watched the end of the last universe and bore witness to the birth of a new. These giants smile when the frail, simple, complex, wonderful, beautiful humans who they walk alongside are happy. I feel I have witnessed something unseen by all, but a select, blessed few, and I smile. I smile, for I have seen why the angels are burnt. Some things must happen, Shadow said. His voice wavered. He was finally weakening. I watched his blood, Allison's blood, drip from my fingers. So a god really can bleed, I thought as I stood and backed away. His eyes sparked blue fire, white coals. Pure terror filled me. Shadow was rallying. He tried to stand, wings fluttering, unable to lift his weight from the ground. He fell back to a knee, his hand landing heavily on Allison's chest. Her chest. Her chest. It was still gushing blood. How much blood can she have in there? It was the only way, I mumbled. All I could think about was the blood on my hands. It was getting cold. Emergency lights were flickering out. Soon, the only illumination left would be that haunting glow of the monster before me, the creature whose very essence burnt like pure oxygen. Not the only way. Shadow's wings heaved with colossal effort. His body launched several meters into the air, hovering for a moment as he spun to face me. For the first time, as his blood dripped from my fingers and he landed in front of me, I could feel just an inkling of the immense mass he possessed. The entire ship shook beneath his weight. My heart hammered away, terror filling my bones, and willed myself to stand firm. Shadow spread his wings. The light was blinding. It was so cold, but everything in me began to burn. Soon I could see nothing but his eyes, blazing blue fire amidst the sea of white. This was the end. Do it, Shadow. Finish it. I shot awake in my bunk. I could feel the tension in every bone, but especially in the vestigial bones between my shoulder blades. Cold sweat, again, every night this week. You were dreaming again, Shadow's voice purred gently from the other side of our quarters. He chuckled, or something like that, adding, Seraph. I told you. I slid out of my bed coverings and peeled my wet clothing from my body. Don't call me that. It's weird. You call me Shadow. Yeah, well... I rummaged through my footlocker for a softer shirt. Everything felt grating on my skin these days. You can't tell me your name, so you're stuck with that one. Shadow turned his head away from his charge. Both of his dimly burning yellow eyes fell on me. This was new. He never made eye contact when we spoke. Why do you speak to me? I don't know, I replied, and I slipped into a light pink human microwave napped cotton shirt. Allison had given me this after she made some sort of laundry procedural error, and it no longer fit her. Whenever I felt like clawing my way out of my skin, this was the one to wear. It just happened. Why don't you talk to anyone else? Because... Shadow turned back to face his sleeping charge. It's dangerous. But talking to me is safe? I asked. Shadow didn't respond. I am telling you. Fulton removed the probes from my chest. his multi-jointed digits easily manipulating the tiny parts and placing them back in their case. Everything is reading out perfectly normal. Well, everything does not feel fine. I put my uniform shirt back on and stood from the examination bench. My vestigials are killing me. They hurt all the damn time. Worse than when I grew them as a fledgling. I keep having nightmares, horrible dreams I can't remember when I wake. I'm also hearing this ringing noise. Everyone is very stressed. Fulton stowed his medpack in its spot on the equipment rack, shrugged with his 4 arms, and said, "All these FARG attacks. Everyone deals with stress their own way. It's not like your added duties are easy." "Well, if I don't get some sleep and get rid of this ringing in my ears, Fulton," I buttoned my uniform jacket and walked towards the door, "I am going to kill somebody." Ozaf collided with me and spun out across the polished floor of the corridor, tentacles flailing wildly. "Whoa, whoa, whoa." Sorry, I held out my wiry arm. Ozaf wrapped around it with one of his tentacles and steadied himself. "Walking like that, you're gonna kill me, Sherry," Ozaf said, his coverings flashing yellow and blue. "She what?" "I was watching films with Allison, and I learned a new human word last night," Ozaf said excitedly, enunciating each Terran word with vigour. "French is my favourite. All the best words are French, and better yet, it isn't on the don't use 'cause it's harassment list the captain put out last week. There were a lot of French words on that list, like right," I cut him off, a small smile creeping up the muscles in my cheek and onto my chin. "And what are you doing down here?" "I am here to complain to someone with the traction problems I have on these damn floors. Should not be a foot messenger," Olaf saluted dramatically, and did a little shuffle which reminded me of a human entertainer Allison showed me named Charlie Chaplin. Complaint noted. I rolled my eyes and pushed a stray bit of plumage back into place behind my ear. "Anything else?" "Yeah, Captain wants to see you and the rest of your team in the briefing room. He thinks he has a lock on something." "Oh, I don't remember. Something you lock and shit." "Right," I said, chuckling softly and beginning my trek up the hall. "Later we might need to go over some of these human words you're learning." "Bye-bye, have fun storming the castle," I called back over my shoulder. "Definitely gonna have that talk, Ozaf." As I ascended the hall, I heard my bilge-out herding friend mumble, "It would take a miracle," and made a mental note to ask Allison to translate for me later. I'm beginning to wonder whether movie night is actually a bad idea, which will end in all our so-called universal translation systems going haywire. You've got to be kidding me. Now I'm doing it. What the hank is a haywire anyway? In the first week of the FARG attacks, we lost a lot of our security forces. By a lot, I mean nearly all of them, and it has been really hard to replace them. Most of the beings on the Fractal's crew are highly specialised. By highly specialised, I mean, well, let me use the human turn of phrase I find quite fitting. They suck at tasks outside their primary skill set. With our security forces in need of replenishment, naturally, 2 tiny, wispy, lightweight analysts were nominated. Those 2 were the only survivors of an attack in a crowded corridor, myself and Allison. That's when my secret got out. I hatched during the largest storm in a century on a planet known as Seraph 1. Allison was born on a volatile planet called Terra, which, like Seraph, was unofficially classified as a death world by the intergalactic community. Once someone let slip the hypothesis that we survived because we were reared on death worlds, it was pretty much settled that we would be the ones to lead and rebuild the new security forces. I won't tell you who outed me. There is no need. Ozaf knows what he did. Luckily for Allison and me, there were 2 more Deathworlders, and they volunteered to join up, Taika and V. Now, V joining us was no surprise to anyone. Her mate died in the first attacks, and she had been looking for an excuse to stick her claws into something ever since. Taika, on the other hand, well, let's just say he was the unexpected volunteer. Most death worlds produce the swift, the cunning, the fiercest of predators. Most death worlds. Others, like Kokor, apparently produce rock-hard, rocks. We didn't think Taika was intelligent enough to know what a death world was, much less survive on himself. In fact, no one remembers letting him out of the loading bay so he could come to the meeting. His fingers are too large to manipulate door controls. This may or may not have been intentional on the part of the loadout team. He accidentally sat on one of their crew at the last meeting. He broke the chair and the crewman. Anyway, Alison settled it. She said the only stupid thing we could do was leave the walking, talking, fireproof Kokoran behind, instead of, walking behind him. I thought for sure he was going to lose his marbles. My stars, humans, are full of surprises. She made Taika smile. The pack bonding was nearly complete. A Kitsuan of Volpine 6, a human from Terra, a Sephiri of Seraph 1, and a giant rock from a giant rock. We had the survival chemicals and uncanny biological skills we needed. All that remained was a bad idea to get us started. Guess what today is? No way, Captain Geraint said. It'll never work. I'll make it work, Alison jabbed at the astral charts between her and the captain. Look, you said we need to be proactive, and you're right. I checked. The distress calls we logged when we started this 2 weeks ago, they never pinged a single comms buoy. Nothing. But this, Geraint huffled and shook his baggy lips. This flight path is insane. That's why she's in charge, V said. She was reclining lazily on top of a stack of cargo crates and slowly brushing her red bristled tail back and forth against the ceiling. Where are we going? I asked, joining the captain, Alison and Shadow at the map projector. Alison pulled at her red hair. I don't know. I had this feeling. I stole a glance at Shadow. I couldn't look long. No one else here could see him, but I swear he was looking right. Contented, smug bastard right now. In his own, practically unchanging sort of way. I couldn't put my finger on it. Alison queued up some new astral nav data. So I sent a probe here, and I think I found the Farg ship. You want to attack the Farg ship? How? I asked. We have weapons now. Compared to human guns, these Farg guns suck. But we have weapons. Fultan rejigged a bunch of the battle armour we salvaged and fitting them to our exosuits. The fractal is huge, I countered. They will absolutely see us coming and blow us to bits. That's why we won't be using this ship, Alison stated. We have no assault craft, nothing suited for space flight, nothing with shields. Exactly, Alison grinned and showed me a graphite drawing. They will never see us coming. I switched my comms unit off and stood next to Alison and Shadow. I hated exosuits. Armoured exosuits are also way up there on my list of favourite things. But Alison wouldn't be able to hear me through all that armour and tempered glass. So what do you think of this idea, Shadow? I assumed he could hear me. I didn't expect him to answer. It will work. I need to get on that vessel. I don't know how I could hear his voice, but I could. Wait, I could barely hold in my outrage. This whole thing is your idea? My idea? Her idea? Our idea? Shadow rattled off. Mostly the same. We aren't so separated as it may appear to you. Why do you need to go? I thought you just protected the suicidal ape until... I don't remember. Shadow turned away from me and checked the buckles on the back of Alison's suit. I'm not what I once was. V rapped on my visor and signed to me. I turned my comms unit back on and the chatter returned. Who are you talking to? V said, her voice full of deep, purring alto tones. I couldn't hear anything you were saying. Sorry, old habit, I said, spouting a quick lie to cover up my strange behaviour. I always talk to myself before a mission. What do you mean, always? V asked. her tail swishing pensively in the zero-G atmosphere of the loading bay. "Oh, I did 2 rotations back on Seraph," I explained, "just like everyone else." "Alright, are we all good to go?" Allison chirped in. Yes, I wrapped my arms around the anchor straps and lifted myself into position. "But what is it?" Allison asked as she hurled her lean body up beside me. "This will be fun," V said as she nimbly leapt into position. "That's one word for it," I groaned. My stomachs lurched, and the hollowed bones in my skull, once necessary, now a remnant of my species past, sung out as the jet skid activated and launched us towards the open bay doors. The expanse of space opened up in front of us. We were flying, full ballistic, on the back of a kokoran. I stole a glance over my shoulder and saw Shadow flying effortlessly behind us, wings outstretched, wider than I had ever seen them. "Comms going cold for crypto boot sequence," Allison said in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Dead silence. No breathing, no engine sounds, no pattering feet and tentacles, no artificial light and electromagnetic humming. I could do this forever. I was flying, soaring like I was always meant to before my ancestors lost their wings. The clouds of literal stardust wafted in around us, sparkling like a million gems. The sector was empty, beyond empty really, uncharted. It was intended to be a new route, and we were there first. The start and end points had been marked and plotted for us on both sides, but it was our job to see what was in the middle. And it was beautiful. "Brake, brake, brake!" Allison shouted through the comms. My turn. My muscles snapped to life. I'd done this 100 times in training. I guess I shouldn't have mentioned a skill if I didn't want my human to use it for some feather-brained plan. Allison on my right hand, V on my left. My legs collided and snapped, vaulting us free from the immense mass that was Tika. The change of force redirected the kokoran's body into a head-over-heels rotation. He was heading right where he was supposed to. My ventral thrusters fired, and I held tight to my charges as I calculated our arc and the number of skews flips required. One graceful loop, maintaining as much momentum as possible, I threw our bodies into a gentle follow trajectory, 50 meters behind Taker. Shadow fell into position under us, aligning his torso with hers, so as to better shield her from harm. Then he did something strange, something wonderful. Shadow spread his wings out, out, and out until they enveloped the 3 of us entirely. As we plummeted towards what any sane person would assume to be our deaths, I watched in awestruck wonder as the stardust collided with Shadow's wings and ignited into a rainbow of colours around us. The burning stardust sang a song for us. The resonance radiated from Shadow's wings into my bones. Euphoria. The maddest minds do burn the brightest. These were the echoes of eternity. In spaceflight, it feels more like things are coming towards you than the other way around. So, believe me when I tell you, it's not a good feeling to see a battle cruiser bearing down. It's unsettling enough to approach such a large object when in a shuttle, flying pure ballistic in exosuits inside some sort of weird stardust-filled energy storm trailing behind a sentient rock is no different. Actually, no. As beautiful as our approach was, this is way, way worse. Allison did all the math. She stayed up all night doing the maths. I put my 21st Seraph Aerial Assault Group training into use. Taika went exactly where I threw him. We flew exactly where we were supposed to behind him. Typically, and I say this from a purely theoretical understanding, when exo-aerial troops are inserted without a breaching pod, the troops are launched behind an artillery barrage. The fractal has no artillery. "No problem," said the Death Welders. "We shall make our own hole, for we, the mighty, have a very large rock." What could possibly go wrong? What none of our brilliant Death Welder intellects accounted for was the pure existential terror of watching Taika spiral through the void towards the hull of the Farg ship, watching all the while knowing that if he failed to make the hull we had calculated, we would fly for 50 meters of pure terror, and then abruptly become a multi-species splatter paint on the outer hull of the battle cruiser. We hoped that given our small mass, we would not be spotted by any defense systems the ship would have. It was worth hoping. Optimism, the curse of the fool who has survived against odds one too many times. Luckily for us, our optimism was simply misplaced and not unfounded. Taika hit the hull of the Farg ship and gouged a hole twice as big as we required for entry. Then the guns opened up on us. Pretty fast response for a pirate ship. Way too fast, really. I honestly never considered getting shot at during the moment between Taika's impact and our landing. Shadow saved our dumbasses. Or maybe he saved Allison and we just happened to be close enough to benefit. I am certain it was terrifying for Allison and V. They could see the flak cannons firing at us, nearly point blank. They could see the explosion that hit us, but didn't hit us. Let's just say it was different for me. The barrage of proximity cluster bombs came at us from both sides. I could see Allison's eyes dilating, a vascular response connected to the realization that she was about to perish, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. Shadow unfurled his wings from the cocoon he had made for us in flight, and simultaneously kicked me in the chest. I thought my ribs would fracture. The kick was enough to throw us all out of range of the explosion, but I saw it. Shadow spread his wings. They grew dozens of meters in a split second. The barrage struck and then he burnt. Shadow ignited in a blaze of purple fire as we tumbled, unharmed, through the breach in the Farg cruiser. V followed the plan. She tossed the hull breach canister as we passed through the hole. The nano mesh sealed the breach, and with a little help from our little four-armed friend of mine, also spun a tendril of wire between our suits and the new wall to arrest our descent. It wasn't gentle per se, but it had to hurt less than re-entering a grav field and impacting the wall full speed. "We should be dead," gasped V, as she cut herself down from the wall and landed nimbly on the deck. We got lucky. Allison dropped beside V and readied her rifle. The cluster bombs exploded prematurely, and the shockwave pushed us inside ahead of the shrapnel. Taika, still short of breath from Shadow's kick. "You good, buddy?" The walking mountain peeled himself off the adjacent wall of the corridor, which now held a human Looney Tunes-style imprint of the Cock-a-run, and said, "Taika, ouch." "Good job," Allison said, as she merrily slapped Taika on the flank. "Bot's going out," V said, her voice still notably shaky as she released a swarm of repurposed planetary survey drones. "Let's see what we've got." I looked at the emergency wall. The nano mesh was still glowing faintly purple. I couldn't decide. Was the barrage enough to end Shadow? "Ah!" V yelped and turned on a heel. "Run!" My HUD activated a moment later and I saw what she had seen. The survey drones she released were sending back data. It was not good. Allison was saying words I had no comprehension of. Ozaf would probably have known some of them. They sounded agitated and emotive, with lots of percussive beginnings and ing endings. Maybe French. Shadow melted through the barrier, his wings folding and disappearing into his shoulders as his feet aligned on the deck. His eyes were burning, blazing white-hot embers. I wasn't sure how much he knew of our present situation, so I told him in the most concise way possible. I ran. Taika didn't seem to have any problem keeping up with our team. No matter how fast we ran, with Taika bringing up the rear, I could hear a constant barrage of rifle fire and the concurrent impacts on his back as he shielded us. Shadow suddenly lunged ahead of me, his wings propelling his form forward like a lightning bolt. It only took a moment longer for me to spot what the Guardian had seen. We were running towards an infrared minefield. The others wouldn't be able to see it. They would be cut to pieces. Shadow kicked off the ground. His powerful wings carried his body past V, past Allison. Another beat violently launched his body into a head-first corkscrew spiral. His wings expanded just beyond the width of the corridor. Their tips blazed like white-hot plasma torches as they shredded through the laser emitters hidden in the walls. I did the only thing I could think of. I fired my gun and, somehow, hit the control panel on the other end of the corridor. Pretty sure Shadow didn't actually need my help, but it felt nice to do something. "Nice shot," V shouted, and then dove sideways, howling, "Take this left." "This is a dead end," Allison wailed, but she followed the Kitsuwan. "It's blocked." Lacking any better ideas, I followed. Turns out it was a good move. Taika came in just behind me as the hallway erupted with weapons fire from both ends. He had several plasma rounds, slowly melting off his shell. He charged past me and through a reinforced door on the other end of the hall. "We are so monumentally screwed," Allison shouted and dove in behind Taika. "The bots marked this spot for a reason," V said as she and I entered the room. "It's state-of-the-art survey tech." "Better figure it out quick." I knelt by the remains of the doorway and steadied my rifle, eyes locked on the end of the corridor. I could hear the fog approaching, marching in heavy boots. "Oh, you gorgeous thing," Allison said wistfully. "Come to Mama." I looked over my shoulder. My vestigial bones twitched and pulled against my suit. Allison was holding a very large handgun. It looked like one of the weapons used in her human action films. Not sure it would turn the tide for us, but hey, some people say the only thing necessary for winning is to give a human a gun and point them in the direction of the enemy. The enemy would be here any second, so pointing would probably be redundant at this juncture and not likely enough to save us. I felt my vestigial bones tingling. My eyes drifted past Allison and her new toy, past Shadow's glowing form, past the hordes of treasures littered across the cargo hold. I could feel it. "I need 60 seconds. I didn't wait for a response. I turned from the doorway and lunged into the treasure trove. My eyes were locked on one item, a nondescript blue military crate. I heard Allison shouting something. Her new toy thundered, most likely throwing large explosive-propelled projectiles. Taika's footsteps rumbled away from me. V was firing madly and howling. My HUD showed 3 friendlies and 1 giant red blob of incoming Farg raiders. I ripped my helmet off. No time to check whether there was suitable atmosphere. I got lucky. 2 more strides. I could feel the nerve endings in my vestigial bones coming alive. There was only one thing that would cause that. I ripped open the seal of my exosuit, stripping as I ran. I ducked and stumbled as a plasma round flew past my head, singeing my feathers. "Please work," I prayed, as my hands fell on the box latches. The locks disintegrated, and a hydraulic system hissed to life within. Plasma was splattering everywhere around me. Tiny droplets fell on my exposed skin. I was burning. Twin wires shot out of a gap in the box, over my shoulders, and latched onto the stubby ends of my exposed vestigial bones. The shock was intense, so much more than I remembered. It took my breath away. The skin on my arms was melting. I didn't care. There was pure glory, trapped in a little blue box. Identity confirmed. Chief Gaia, 21st Aerial, awaiting instructions. My body was burning. The box was coming alive. The casing broke down into component pieces, was drawn up the wires into my vestigial bones, and formed the wings of the suit. The wings launched me into the air, performing an automated sequence. They lifted my body up over the contents of the case and dropped me into the center. It had already received formatting instructions from the microchips implanted in my nervous system. The wings folded in front of my body as I fell, shielding me from the incoming weapon's fire. My feet slid effortlessly into the waiting 4-taloned boots. The knee-high boots immediately unfolded, encasing my slender legs in a flexible, but highly durable, scaled, armoured fabric. The suit forced me to my knees as the back piece formed. I stretched out my ruined arms towards a pair of gauntlets pressed against either side of a crested helmet. This part was going to hurt. The gauntlets activated, leaping onto my hands, lifting the helmet with them as they expanded over my arms. The pain was indescribable. The helmet locked into place, bonding with the back piece, sealing me away from the external atmosphere. The visor illuminated and flashed a message. Loading. "Greetings, Chief," a voice said. "You have been taking fire in a hostile environment and have been wounded. Activating diagnostic med pack. Preparing countermeasures. Stand by." The drugs hit me like a beautiful ton of bricks. Painkillers, stimulants, broad-spectrum antibiotics, atmospheric breath boost, all the good stuff. The suit was still building itself, but it was rebuilding me at the same time. "Corvid here," the suit said in my helmet. "Defensive countermeasures available. 30 seconds pending for full combat operation." Corvid! A second boost of forced atmospheric boost entered my lungs, and my cardiorespiratory function skyrocketed. "Identify 3 non-Seraphim friendlies in the AO and launch countermeasures." Friendlies identified. 3 blue markers popped up in my visor, as did a horde of red. Countermeasures away. The countermeasures fired from the tips of my wings, whistling a shrill song as they flew into the corridor and then exploded. The incoming weapons fire slowed and then stopped. Corvid, located and patch encrypted friendly comms devices. Pathetic code. Really, this is boring. Wonderful, I thought. Just my luck that I get a snarky Corvid. Static sputtered, and then my friends' voices came alive in my helmet. Allison, what the actual shit? Taker, boom. V, wasn't me. 15 seconds. Chief Gaia, specialist loadout. CQB, I am going to enjoy this. My right arm jerked upwards over my shoulder, fingers extended. Something ejected from the equipment compartment on my back. My fingers tightened around the metal pommel of a molecular chain link blade. My wings retracted from their phalanx position. My body jerked upright. Easy there, Corvid. Don't snap me in half. Apologies. You are out of shape. Recalibrating. My left leg lifted. Talons recoiled to strike. It thrust downward. The armoured talons punctured the floor. Allison, V, Taika, come in, I said into my comms. Mic check. V swiveled to face me. Her eyes were so wide I could see them like black saucers inside her helmet. We read you. Crestral 4, active, transferring autonomy, entering support mode. I stumbled forward, slowly gaining control of my gait. Please, tell me you actually know how to drive a Kestrel. I do, sorta. Your assault clearance is active. No user logs exist. Explain or be ejected. What is that? Allison asked. Kestrel 4, experimental battle armor, I replied. Steps were slightly steadier as I joined Allison, where she and V had taken cover on the right side of the doorway. Don't call me experimental, fledgling. You can hardly walk. Explain or be ejected. Corvid, disengage mech assist. Activate for tactical only. Done. That is an advanced mode. Explain or be ejected. How are you running experimental battle armor? Allison inquired. I could see her mind calculating. Metal bird, Taika exclaimed. He pointed at me, sticking his arm out in front of the open doorway, and got shot. Ouch! We don't have time for this, Corvid, I sighed, and responded on comms to everyone. It didn't matter now. I used to be a now. A what? Allison barked. She was reloading her handgun with a magazine of large metal projectiles. Answer acceptable. Oh? Veep heard. What? Allison snapped. Off-world legionnaire. I think your humans call it Black Ops. Tactical alert. Humans are highly dangerous. How do you think I got in this mess, Corvid? Analysis pending. Ah, it was the human. You have beautiful sarcasm, Chief. Wonderful, Allison grinned, and reached inside a pouch on a suit. I have 2 questions. First, can you get us out of this room? Second, does that thing have a good stereo? Alternating current, direct current? I asked, recalling a recent late-night discussion of her love for antiquity rock. Please, Chief, I apologize for doubting your credentials. Corvid actually sounded worried. Humans are listed as erratic and destructive. I implore you, do not let the human electrocute me. AC/DC, Allison corrected me, and handed me a metal card. Back in black. Corvid's broadcast system activated. I repeat, do not allow the human to electrocute me. Back into the black.